So before starting with the current topic, I will give you the summary of previous lecture in which we have learned the concept of requirement engineering, covering its 7 phases like inception, elicitation, then we have elaboration, that is further refining the requirements, and then negotiation, that will lead to SRS phase, or you can say the specification phase, and then after specification we do validation and finally managing the requirements. Also, we look at the formal template provided by IEEE to write an SRS document. Then we covered the concepts of quality function deployment during elicitation phase. And finally, we see the concept of use case scenarios and implementing the use cases, and also the different concepts that are involved in the creation of use cases like include and extend. And further, we see the generalization concept in use cases. Students, in this lecture, we will start with requirement modeling. Basically, after requirement engineering phase, we move towards the design phase that is based on different models. In this lecture, we will particularly focus on these two models, that is scenario-based models and class-based models. Scenario-based models further are described by telling or by explaining the use case models, or in class diagrams and collaboration diagrams make the class-based models. So starting with our first topic, that is on requirement models. In this slide, we will see the different models that come during the requirement modeling phase. And these are basically differentiated on the way they present you the information. First is scenario-based models. It represents the requirement from the point of view of various system actors, as we have already discussed in our previous lecture. Then we have data models. They depict the information domain for the problem, and they highlight the different entities and their associations. Then we have class-oriented models. Data models and class-oriented models are basically similar in many contexts, but have very few points that differentiate them. And these models basically represent the object-oriented classes that have attributes and operations, and the manner in which these classes collaborate to achieve various requirements. Then we have flow-oriented models. Basically, they represent the functional elements of the system and how they transform data as it moves through the system. You can think of it as a normal flow charts that you have learned in your programming subjects, that how basically the overall functionality is going throughout the system or a process. And then we have behavioral models. They depict how the software behaves as a consequence of external events. So this will focus on the external stimuli and then the response of your system. So before moving to the details of different requirement models we have seen, we will first see the major objectives of requirement modeling phase. First is, it describes what the customer requires. You can say it is the first prototype that you will be showing to the users, and they will give you the feedback on it. And to establish the basis for the creation of a software design. Further, they will serve as a grounds of requirement designing or design models at the extended level. So, to define a set of requirements that can be validated once the software is built. It basically gives you the mechanism for validation. So you can say that a requirement model, or sometimes it is known as analysis models, they bridge the gap between the system description that we have acquired from SRS and the design models that are further moved towards the construction phase, or you can say that are linked up with the construction phase, the final design models. So this is the intermediary module that will serve the or you can say the bridge the gap between the system description and the design models. So this diagram is in support of the previous argument. We have seen that system description and design models are linked up through analysis models, or you can say the requirement models. And analysis model basically it bridges the gap between system description and design phase. Requirement modeling approaches. So students, there are two different approaches towards this analysis phase, or you can say the requirement modeling phase. First is structured and the second one is object oriented approach. So starting with structured approach, we can see that it considers data and the processes as a separate entity. Basically, it will define the bounds of data objects and the processes separately. And data objects will be termed as entities and the processes will be named as functionalities, or you can say the functions. So the data objects are modeled in a way that defines their attributes and relationships. We have already seen these concepts in CRC modeling of data objects, or you can say the entities having their attributes and the associations with other entities. And then we have processes that are basically the part of structured approach, and they will tell you about the information flow among the entities that you have described during the data object analysis phase. And these data objects are basically modeled in a manner that shows how they transform data as the data objects, or you can say the information from these objects flow throughout the system. Now the second approach is object oriented approach, as we have already discussed, and this will focus on the definition of classes, also the manner in which these classes collaborate with each other. While defining the classes, you need to add the attributes and operations the classes hold. Operations are basically showing you the functionalities associated with the respective classes. Also, you can say that UML, that is Unified Modeling Language, and the unified processes are predominantly object oriented in nature. So basically, out of these two approaches, software teams often choose one approach and basically excluding all representations or differentiating representations from the other approach. And each element of the requirement model presents the problem from a different point of view. Like if you take a scenario-based model, it will give you the information from actor's point of view. If you take on the class models, they will reflect the different classes and their associations. Likewise, if you take the flow models or flow elements, it will tell you about the information flow in the system. So here comes the pictorial representation of various elements of requirement analysis phase. First is scenario-based models, then we have class models, and then we have behavioral models, flow models. And these are the examples that are listed for the specific models. In scenario-based models, we will see the use cases and user stories. Then in class models, we will cover class diagrams and collaboration diagrams. Then behavioral models will show you the different aspects of behavior of a system by state diagrams and sequence diagrams. Then flow diagram is basically the examples include DFTs, that is data flow diagrams, and the data models. Starting with the discussion on first element of requirement analysis, that is scenario-based models, we see that user satisfaction resides at the top of the list. And if you understand how the end users, or you can say the other actors, want to interact with the system, this is very important aspect of scenario-based models, that we focus on the interaction of various actors towards the system. Your software team basically will be in a better position to characterize requirements and to build the meaningful analysis, or you can say the design. So use cases are simply an aid to defining what exists outside the system, that is, these are known as external actors of the system. We have already discussed these concepts in our previous lecture. So, and then what should be performed by the system, how they are basically interacting with the system. So this is the definition of a use case by Ivar Jacobson. So to start with scenario-based modeling, we need to follow few questions that will ultimately give us good findings or the results. First is, what should we write about? You can think of it as a scenario or a narration that is holding all the details provided by the customer. Secondly, how much should we write about it? This is putting your focus on the technical details that you may need to add according to the situation. Thirdly, how detailed should we make our description? This is about the length of a scenario or a complete description. Finally, how should we organize the description? That is, you can think of it as prioritizing the requirements or giving the sequence to the requirements. This slide is basically putting your focus on the requirement engineering concepts that we have learned in the previous chapter, that is inception and elicitation. That will provide you with the information you'll need to begin writing the use cases. Then the requirement gathering meetings and also the QFT concept that will basically further refine the requirements you have gathered from the customer. And other requirement engineering mechanisms are used to identify the stakeholders. You need to define the scope of the problem initially, then specify overall operational goals, or you can say the functional requirements of your system. Then we need to establish the priorities for the said requirements. Also, we will highlight all the functional requirements, and finally the objects or the entities of the systems are basically shown. So you can say that for developing a set of use cases, list the functions or activities that must be performed by the specific actors. So to demonstrate the concept of scenario-based modeling, we are taking an example of Safe Home Management System from Pressman book. We have already seen this example. So here you can easily find out the list of actions that are basically performed by an homeowner. So the actor here is homeowner, and the interactions with the system are defined by these functions. First is select camera to view. Then he can request thumbnails from all the cameras located on different sites. Then he can use the control pan and zoom for a specific camera, or he can selectively record camera output and replay camera output. And finally, you can see that he can access camera surveillance via the internet display camera views. So this is the list of actions performed by the homeowner. So students, you can see that after requirement gathering, the analysts develop the use cases for each of the function that is noted earlier. And in general, these use cases are written in an informal narrative fashion, or you can say in a scenario form. If more formality is required, the same use case is rewritten using a structured approach. We will discuss this format later in our slides. Example, we are taking one of the functionality from the previous slide, that is, consider the function of access camera surveillance via the internet and using display camera views. So here you can see that we have created the narrative description for the said functionality, that is access camera surveillance via the internet. You need to give the title to use case and then also specify the actor that is associated with the functionality. So you can say that this description will just focus on the camera surveillance part of whole specification. So you can see that there is a variation for a narrative use case that will present the information as an ordered sequence of user actions. Here, the information that has been listed in the form of paragraph in previous slide, it is being listed here in the form of ordered sequence instructions. You can see that first the homeowner logs onto the Safe Home product website, then secondly he will enter his user ID and then so on. So this is the way of writing the ordered sequence of user interactions in the scenario based modeling approach. So moving further, we can see that here is an important concern that the sequential presentation basically does not consider any alternative interaction. Now what does this mean? Alternative interaction basically should be the result of any failure. There should be some way to opt the other situation or other requirement in case of failure. Against it, if you can see that we use narrative description, it is more free flowing and also represents a few alternatives in case of errors. So use cases of this type are basically referred as primary scenarios. Like if I can relate it to the previous slide, these ordered sequence of interactions or user actions are basically the primary scenarios or formulate the primary scenarios. So there is a need of refining a preliminary use case by adding the description of alternative interaction. That is essential for the complete understanding of the function that is being described by the use cases. And therefore each step in the primary scenario is further evaluated by asking the following questions. So the first question is, can the actor take some other action at this point? If the answer is yes, then there should be an alternate solution to the particular action taken by the user. Secondly, is it possible that the actor will encounter some error condition at a certain point? So if it is, then what might it be? You need to show the error or failure message. Thirdly, is it possible that the actor will encounter some other behavior at the point? This is that when the actor interacts with the system, so the response of the system is somewhat opposite to the expected results. So if it is, then what might it be? You need to find out the exceptional behavior of a system or its response towards an actor stimuli. So now applying these questions to the same scenario we have already been considering for access camera surveillance via internet. We can see here the same list of instructions. Now here you can see the point 6th and 7th are highlighted as there is an alternate sequence of interaction for a user to go through. First, we will go through the question that can the actor take some other action at this point? So the answer to this is yes. Why? Because he may choose the view of thumbnail snapshots of all the cameras simultaneously, or hence you can say that this is the secondary scenario that might be named as view thumbnail snapshots for all the cameras. Secondly, is it possible that the actor will encounter some error condition? Any number of error condition can occur as a computer-based system basically operates. And in this context, we consider only error condition that are directly appear as a result of action described in step 6 and 7. And again the answer to the question is yes, as a floor plan with the camera icons may have never been configured. See if this is the situation that your camera is not configured properly, so this will give you an error message. Hence, selecting pick a camera results in an error condition that no floor plan configured for this house. So this is the error condition that becomes a secondary scenario. So finally, the third question, that is it possible that the actor will encounter some other behavior at this point? So the answer to this question is again yes. As step 6 and 7 occur, the system may encounter an alarm condition. So as a result of step 6 and 7, there can be an exceptional behavior of a system that will result in alarm. This would result in the system displaying a special alarm notification focusing on type, location and the system action, and providing the actor with number of options relevant to the nature of alarm. So because this is the secondary scenario that can occur at any time for virtually of all the interactions, this would particularly fall in the category of secondary scenario. Also, you need to see that each of the situation described in the previous slide is characterized as a use case exception. It is important to know that the different situations, or you can say the failure messages, will result in use case exception that ultimately will give you the secondary scenario as a result to the primary sequence of interactions. An exception describes, now this is the definition of exception, that it describes a situation, you can say either a failure condition or an alternative chosen by the actor that causes the system to exhibit somewhat different behavior. So now we will focus on writing a formal use case using a structured approach. Here are certain important elements to note before writing the use case. First is goal. Secondly, we have precondition. Then trigger identifies, scenario, and finally we have exception identifier. So starting with the first one, the goal, it basically identifies the overall scope, or you can say the objective of a specific use case or a functionality. Then a precondition, it describes what is known to be true before the use case is initiated. It means these are the conditions that need to be true before your use case starts. So, like you can think of it as an example here, in the case of bank management system, if you do any transaction, you need to be logged in before doing that transaction. So here the login condition is a precondition for the use case to start. Then we have the trigger identifiers. It is basically defining the event or condition that gets the use case started. So it is actually that stimuli which enables the use case to start itself. And then we have a scenario that lists the specific actions that are required by the actor and the appropriate system responses. This is the whole narrative description for a formal use case you are focusing. Then we have exceptions identifier. It basically defines the situations that are uncovered as the preliminary use case is refined. So here is the concept of primary scenarios and secondary scenarios, which we have learned previously. Additional elements may or may not be included. Finally, there are some additional elements that may or may not be included, or you can say it as an optional aspect. So students, here is an example of formal use case, and we are applying these concepts on the same example that we have taken for camera surveillance. We can see here the goal in context is to view the output of camera placed throughout the house from any remote location via the internet. So it is the precise objective for the use case we are focusing. Then the preconditions, that is the conditions that are known to be true before the execution of the current use case. So system must be fully configured, appropriate user ID and passwords must be obtained. These are the prior conditions, or you can say the preconditions for it. Then the trigger, where actually your use case starts working. It is defining here that the homeowner decides to take a look inside the house while away. So this is a scenario. It is the ordered sequence of instructions which we have already seen before. So then finally we move towards exception. Exceptions in the case are listed here as a numbered instructions. First is ID or passwords are incorrect or not recognized. So it will result in a secondary use case, that is validate ID and passwords. So surveillance functions not configured for this system. This is an error message we have already seen. So you got a message of configure surveillance function. Then homeowner selects view thumbnail snapshots for all the cameras. This is again a secondary scenario. So in this way you will write the exceptions. Now we will look at the diagrammatic representation that will provide you an ease of understanding in case of complexity. This is the same example of camera surveillance. Here you can see the homeowner as an actor associating with different functionalities. So this is the boundary wall of safe home system and encapsulating the functionalities in the oval shaped icons. This is the interaction line of actor and functionality. And here is the secondary actor that is being responsible to provide functionality to the said use case, or the requirement of access camera surveillance via the internet.